Good afternoon. My name is Kate Hogan, and together with Judge Danica Frost, we serve as the co-chairwomen for the 4th Judicial District's Committee on Equal Justice in the Courts, and we want to welcome you to today's event. The turnout from the public and the judiciary is extraordinary. I am very mindful of court security because they keep us safe. And I was asked by Lieutenant Costello at the outset to make sure that everyone knows if anything happens, just go down the back stairways and out to the right. I don't really know what she meant by that, but just follow the pack. And Lieutenant Costello, I did exactly what you told me to do. As I said, the turnout is extraordinary, and we are very lucky to have the acting chief judge of the Court of Appeals with us today, and I imposed on him because his schedule was such he didn't know whether he could make it or not, but he was able to make it along with another Supreme Court judge, Judge Singas, and I imposed on him if he would join us at the podium for some brief comments. So please welcome Acting Chief Judge Tony Canatera.
Thank you, Kate. So I'd like everyone to note that I am not wearing my glasses. That is a sign, that's a really good sign, because when I have my glasses on, it means I have prepared remarks to deliver. And I have no prepared remarks today. As Judge Hogan said, I didn't really even know that I was going to be here until earlier today. The Court of Appeals was hearing arguments all week, and we had our last conference this morning, and I don't know if you know how things work at the Court of Appeals, but sometimes they can go kind of long in those conferences. But we ended in time for Judge Singas and I to come up here, and I am so happy that we have this opportunity to be here and to learn a little bit of the history of this region, to see the beautiful display that was put together for this event. I've been to many diversity celebrations, Black History Month celebrations, or programs of various types, and they've always been enlightening experiences for me. But the opportunity afforded to me by being on the Court of Appeals to sort of spread out and be wider in my geographic reach has been really remarkable. Learning just about Solomon Northup was amazing, and I only had a few minutes to do it, but I believe, for me, someone from my background, and I was talking to Judge Richardson-Mendelson about this a few days ago, you know, because we're both speaking at a Black History Month celebration next week, and I've been really struggling about what it is that I can say at a Black History Month celebration. And for me, going to these events and now seeing them all around the state, it affords me an opportunity to learn, to know something that I didn't know. And just in the few minutes I was looking at manuscripts today, I learned something. And I feel like in this sphere, when you learn something, not only does it increase your understanding, but maybe, if you're really lucky, it increases your empathy, and it makes it makes your worldview a more comprehensive one, and hopefully that means we all become slightly better people and better neighbors to each other. So I am happy to be here. I'm so happy to be at any of these that I can make it to. I apologize in advance. I do have to leave early. I have some commitments that are coming up in a little while. But I know you have an absolutely wonderful cast of speakers today. Judge Mendelson, who I mentioned just a few minutes ago. Justice Gary is going to be speaking. Deputy Chief Administrative Judge St. George is going to be speaking. And Judge Frost, who I just met, I'm sure is going to be absolutely phenomenal. So you're in very good hands, and I hope you enjoyed today's program, and I look forward to seeing you out there at some more of these. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you, Acting Chief Canatera. I am so delighted that you were able to be here today. So As I indicated, this is the fourth JD's Equal Justice in the Courts Committee effort to recognize Black History Month. And I want to welcome you because we're honoring Solomon Northup, who many know because of the Academy Award acclaimed movie, but we're also honoring Henry B. Northup. And Paul McCarty is in the front row here. For those of you who are on live stream, in the other room there have been two exhibits. One is from the Fort Edward Historical Society. Paul McCarty is the executive director, and it is an extensive display on Solomon Northup and Henry B. Northup. And we also have the Saratoga County exhibit, and Lauren Rogers was very great in having the court documents that Solomon Northup, as a self-represented litigant, won wages from his canal digging boss, and it was really impressive. And I think, as Acting Chief Ganatero says, it is something that everyone can learn something about when you read about him. Now, one of the goals of, and we've been tasked, is to bring your local history to life and make it so that the public is aware of that. And the hope with that is that we remember our past, we're mindful of where we are now, and we are inspired to see how we can improve. And I know that I'm biased, and I think that the fourth JD is the best. But I think in the area of history, we certainly may be the best. It was the history and the story of Solomon Northup is absolutely extraordinary. He was abducted as a free man and forced to live as a slave with all the horror that entailed. And it is well documented in the movie. The movie is powerful, and it's so difficult to watch what he had to endure, but it gives you insight into the man. And as amazing as the movie is, his autobiography, the book on which the movie is based, is extraordinary. And I highly recommend it to each and every one of you. Because when you read that book, you feel like Solomon's sitting next to you. And you feel like he's telling you his story. And I know that when I read the book, I was so impressed with his intellect, his mental and physical strength, and the depth of his character. Now, his story, his autobiography, also tells you the story of Henry B. Northup. And he may be, as Paul McCarty says, the unsung hero of the saga. And I think Solomon Northup would agree with that. To understand what we hope is the prestige of the Henry B. Northup Award, it's important for you to know a little bit about this man. Henry B., as I've come to call him, was a lawyer from Sandy Hill, New York. That's now Hudson Falls, and it's located in Washington County. Henry B. had a lifelong connection to Solomon and secured his freedom. They shared a last name because Solomon's father, Mintus, was an enslaved person to Henry B.'s great-uncle. And upon the great-uncle's death, Mintus was emancipated, and he took the Northup name. Now, nobody knew that Solomon had been abducted until Solomon wrote a letter to Henry B., and he was on a brig going from Richmond to Louisiana, knowing that he was a free man and suddenly abducted into slavery. And he sought out the help of Henry B. When Henry B. received the letter, he immediately went to then Governor Seward, and he was trying to pursue Solomon's freedom through a statute that was enacted in 1840. And the New York statute authorized the governor to appoint an agent to secure the freedom of any free man or woman held in bondage in another state. When Henry B. went to Governor Seward said, "We don't know where he is. There isn't enough information. We'll have to wait till we learn more." 12 hard years later, Solomon's wife, Anne, who was then living in Glens Falls, New York, received a letter with more details about Solomon's whereabouts. As soon as Anne received that letter, she went over to Sandy Hill to see Henry B. again. And Henry B. then went to the governor of New York. The governor then was Governor Hunt. And Governor Hunt was very moved by the facts of the case and appointed Henry B. as the agent to secure Solomon's freedom. On December 14th, 1852, Henry B. left Sandy Hill for D.C., and he went and he secured 3 letters in support of his efforts. One was from the Secretary of War, one was from a U.S. Senator, and one was from a Supreme Court Justice, who also happened to be from Washington County, New York. Henry B. then left D.C. and went to Louisiana. And on January 3rd, 1853, he went to the Epps plantation. Henry B. was in the company of the sheriff, and he and the sheriff had made an arrangement. He said to the sheriff, they're going to question whether this is actually Solomon Northup, so I want you to ask him some questions when you see him. And these questions will be about his wife and his children, so that you can show, and I can show in a court of law, that this is in fact Solomon Northup, and I didn't do anything to influence it. So the sheriff approaches Solomon Northup in the field, where he is with the other enslaved people, and the sheriff says, do you see that gentleman over there? And Solomon Northup, who was known as Platt when he was enslaved, looked over and said, Henry B. Northup, thank God Almighty you are here. Imagine that moment. Imagine that moment for both Solomon and Henry B. And the 2 men embraced. Solomon said that the people in the field were shocked to see a black man and a white man embrace. And Henry B. looked at him and he said, put down that sack. Your cotton picking days are over. You are going home. And that's what they did. They went home. Now, there were many more things that Henry B. did as a lawyer on behalf of Solomon. I won't get into what happened in the D.C. trial court, and I won't get into, it's fascinating. But for the time right now, I just want to give you a brief context about the extraordinary efforts of Henry B. Northup, who did everything he could to help Solomon Northup, a lifelong friend. Now, at this juncture, I would like to welcome the New York State Court's ceremonial unit, and I'd ask that you stand, please. This New York State Court ceremonial unit for the presentation of the colors. We are very lucky to have a descendant of Henry B. Northup with us today, Mr. Hay. But Mr. Hay, I had asked if he would do the Pledge of Allegiance, and he said, I am a rather private man, I would prefer not. So I said, no problem. I've got good friends in the Glens Falls chapter of the NAACP who are here, and they will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And after the pledge, I ask that you remain standing for our national anthem, which will be performed by President Mary Gooden, Vice President Lee Braggs, and the other members of the Glens Falls chapter of the NAACP.
Present on.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I would very much like to thank the members of the NAACP for that wonderful rendition. And I also would like to thank the New York State Court Ceremonial Unit. They came up from New York City to be with us today. So, not that Saratoga's the moon, but it was a bit of an effort on their part. As you know, the part of this objective of this ceremony is to give the Henry B. Northup Award, and I think you may notice in the program that there's no mention of it, and it's because we wanted to do it as a surprise. And so I'm very happy to welcome the Deputy Chief Administrative Judge for all the courts outside of New York City, Judge Norman St. George. I'm happy to welcome him to the podium because he's going to present the award.
Good afternoon. Happy Black History Month. I'm Judge Norman St. George, and I am privileged to serve as the Deputy Chief Administrative Judge for all of the courts outside of New York City, and I am honored to be with you here today in the 4th Judicial District. What better place to celebrate Black History Month and to take part in the inaugural Solomon Northup ceremony, recognizing and highlighting the life of and legacy of Solomon Northup and his friend and savior, Henry Northup. Let me first thank Acting Chief Judge Anthony Canatero and Acting Chief Administrative Judge Tomiko Amaker for their steady leadership, especially during this season of transition. Our courts remain in good hands. We are strong. Let's give them a round of applause. We remain committed to the effective, efficient, and expeditious administration of justice, and we continue to prioritize access to justice and equal justice in all the courts of this state. Let me acknowledge and welcome Court of Appeals Judge Madeline Singis. And let me thank the Honorable Presiding Justice Elizabeth Gary for her amazing stewardship of the Appellate Division 3rd Department. And you didn't think she came alone, did you? She came with her Appellate Division judges. So I want to recognize Appellate Division Justice McShane, Appellate Division Justice Clark, Appellate Division Justice Aarons, and Appellate Division Justice Pritzker for being here this afternoon. And even when they retire from the appellate division, you cannot keep them away from us. Retired Appellate Division Justice McCure, thank you for being here. And so to let me know how I'm doing, we have retired former DCAJ Jan Plumador here with us. I want to really give sincere thanks to your district administrative judge, Felix Katina, for his outstanding leadership of the 4th Judicial District and for hosting this amazing event, truly amazing. We have the presiding justice of the Court of Claims, Dick Seiss, with us here today. And I know District Administrative Judge of the 3rd JD, Gerald Connolly, was planning to be here, But his mother had been ill, and she's doing better, and he was bringing her back home today. So we'll keep him and his mother in our prayers, please. Now, in November, just 3 months ago, I was here visiting the 4th Judicial District, actually looking for some office space since I'm here so often. And the amazing and incredible Judge Kate Hogan approached me with the idea of this incredible event. So special thank you to Judge Kate Hogan for materializing an idea, and Judge Tanika Frost, the co-chairs of the 4th JD's Equal Justice in the Courts Committee, and to your entire committee for bringing this to fruition. Thank you very much. I want to thank the Solomon Northup Legacy, the Fort Edward Historical Association, the Saratoga County Clerk's Office, and the New York State Unified Court System's Office for Justice Initiatives for highlighting this fascinating piece of history and reminding us all of the important history that exists all over our great state of New York. And let me acknowledge all of the judges that are here today. Thank you all for coming. All of the members of our court family, friends, everyone here assembled. Thank you for taking time out of your day to be here, the Northup family, relatives, and descendants. Let us not forget that Black history is American history, and we must continue to tell it, and tell it all, the good and the bad, the heart-wrenching and the inspirational. This year's theme for Black History Month, Black Resistance and Resilience, is highlighted here today by this program. Now, when I was reading about Solomon Northup's life and his memoir, I realized that I had actually watched the movie, 12 Years a Slave. Many thoughts and emotions came flooding into my mind. First, the barbarity and inhumanity and injustice of slavery and all that occurred during that dark period of U.S. history. Second, the amazing resilience of the human spirit of those enduring slavery. And third, the tireless resolve of those opposed to slavery. Solomon Northup, once he was freed and reunited with his family here in New York, became an active abolitionist, sharing his story and lecturing along the Northeast and helping slaves flee to Canada. Solomon became an agent of change. In addition, despite the horrors of that time, there were good people who, no matter the odds or the personal cost, did the right thing. Henry Northup, in his quest to find and free his friend Solomon from slavery, was declared an agent of the state by New York's then governor. This gave him the authority to travel to Louisiana, join forces with a local attorney for Solomon's freedom. Henry became an agent of change. Today, I have the distinct honor of presenting a very special award, the Henry B. Northup Award for Excellence in Enhancing Equal Justice in the Courts, to one of New York State's most outstanding jurists. The dynamic, the outstanding, the incomparable, the Unified Court System's own agent of change, the person I call the Titan of Justice. And she has no idea that she was being presented with this award here today. The Honorable Edwina Richardson-Mendelson, Deputy Chief Administrative Judge for Justice Initiatives. And we're going to talk a little about her. We're going to talk a little about her. Now, before I present the award, I want you to tell you a little about her accomplishments. We got to roll a chair up for her. DCAJ Richardson-Mendelson joined the court system as a court attorney referee in family court, and in 2003, she became a judge of the Queen's Family Court. It's 20 years now. Congratulations. Thank you. She went on to be the supervising judge of Queen's Family Court, then the administrative judge of all family courts in New York City. In 2017, DCAJ Richardson-Mendelson was appointed to the Court of Claims. She was also immediately appointed as the Deputy Chief Administrative Judge and took the helm of the newly expanded Office of Justice Initiative. For Justice Initiatives. That's right. See that? For the New York State Unified Court System, where she ensures meaningful access to justice for all, regardless of income, background, or ability. You see how she's looking at me, right? Where's security? Do we have security here? Where's Darryl? DCAJ Richardson-Mendelson also leads the Equal Justice in the Courts initiative, where she ensures the recommendations made by Special Advisor Jay Johnson in his October 2020 report examining racial bias in our courts are implemented statewide. Additionally, DCAJ Richardson-Mendelson ensures implementation of the recommendations of the New York State Judicial Committee on Women in the Courts report, enhancing gender fairness in the courts. In addition to all of these demanding and comprehensive responsibilities, DCAJ Richardson-Mendelson also directs an incredible number of juvenile and family justice initiatives, is a member of the Chief Judge's Commission to Reimagine the Future of Our Courts, and serves on numerous working groups. As of 2021, DCAJ Richardson-Mendelson oversees the Office of Policy and Planning in addition, which is responsible for administering the state's 300 problem-solving courts, including the groundbreaking opioid courts, veterans treatment courts, human trafficking courts, and community courts. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. The actions of those who pursue justice inspire us all as human beings to right the wrongs of injustice and to be modern era agents of change. In the words of Mahatma Gandhi, be the change you want to see in the world." Solomon Northup did just that. Henry Northup did just that. Deputy Chief Administrative Judge Richardson-Mendelson, you are doing just that. Your tireless dedication to provide all New Yorkers fair and equal justice is contagious, it's inspiring, and it's essential. So on behalf of all the judicial leaders here today, the descendants of Solomon Northup, the descendants of Henry Northup, the historical associations and legacies, the court system's Office of Justice Initiatives, that's you, just checking.
Say it one more time.
Four. I gotta think golf. Four. The court system's Office for Justice Initiatives and the 4th District Equal Justice in the Courts Initiative, I am so thrilled to present you with the Henry B. Northup Award for Excellence in Enhancing Equal Justice in the Courts. Congratulations.
Did we surprise you, Judge Mendelson? Man, it was hard to keep quiet, I tell you. But it's so well deserved, and we are so thankful that you are our leader, and you have made such a difference and inspired us to do the important work that we are doing here today. So it's a heartfelt thank you, and you inspire us. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm here to talk a little bit about what we are doing with the Equal Justice in the Courts Initiative committee here in the 4th Judicial District. And on April 19, 2021, Administrative Judge Felix Cantina appointed Judge Hogan and myself to chair the implementation of the Equal Justice in the Courts Initiative for the 4th Judicial District. Following our appointment, we studied Secretary Johnson's report and strategized how to implement its recommendations within our judicial district. Understanding that litigants in Schenectady face different challenges to those in Canton, we traveled throughout our district to listen and to learn about the specific issues in each region to develop a tailored approach to improvement. These meetings were informative and gave us insight to the work we needed to prioritize. Some of our work includes initiating a discussion with the council to the St. Regis Mohawk Nation in Franklin County to explore ways to improve compliance with court directives among the nation, and working with the Office for Justice Initiatives. And Indigent Legal Services to translate the public defender application into Spanish, which resulted from our meeting in Montgomery County, where 32% of the population in the city of Amsterdam is Spanish-speaking, and is now able to fully understand their Fifth Amendment right to counsel in their primary or preferred language. By the way, public defender applications are now available in Spanish throughout the state. The committee has also worked on establishing and strengthening the use of help centers at libraries located in 3 Supreme Court houses within our district through the assistance of Supreme Court Justice James Walsh, Justice Mark Powers in Schenectady, and Justice Mary Farley in St. Lawrence. We have 3 fully functioning help centers to assist pro se litigants in the areas of landlord-tenant issues, uncontested matrimonial matters, and consumer debt law. These help centers are a combination of court and community partnerships working together to provide free information about the law and court procedure to people who do not have an attorney. Policy recommendations relating to sexual harassment training and filing a complaint were drafted by our committee and reviewed by the Inspector General of Bias Matters and Nancy Berry, Chief Operations for the Office of Court Administration. These recommendations were submitted to OCA prior to updates made to the sexual harassment policy, sexual harassment training curriculum, and revisions to the training section of OCA's website. Working with the New York State Court Officers Academy, court officers in the 4th Judicial District have been trained in verbal judo, tactical communication, and procedural justice, ensuring that each courthouse is more inclusive for litigants, starting with the first court representatives they see when they enter the building. Under the leadership of the Honorable Justice Stanley Pritzker, Appellate Division, 3rd Department, the committee is in the final stages of commissioning artwork in the form of a movable mural that evokes sentiments of inclusion and equality that will be displayed in courthouses throughout the state. The original piece will be a visible display of our commitment to the fair treatment and full participation of all people, especially and including populations who have historically been underrepresented or subject to discrimination because of their race and identity. And on April 21st, 2022, with the support of Administrative Judges Felix Katina and Gerald Connolly, the committee hosted a summit for judges of the 3rd and 4th Judicial Districts at Siena College. That was a dialogue led by Deputy Administrative Judge Edwina Richardson-Mendelson and Siena College President Chris Gibson. This was an in-person gathering focused on an initial conversation about what specifically judges must do to ensure equal justice in our own courtrooms. The 4th Judicial District's Equal Justice in the Courts initiative is comprised of Supreme Court justices and judges at the county, city, and town levels, court officers and leadership, county attorneys, court referees, principal law clerks, chief clerks, court reporter, resource coordinator from all corners of our judicial district. The committee is professionally diverse and includes court colleagues of all backgrounds, ethnicities, religions, and gender. At this time, I do want to recognize the members of the committee, and if you are present, would you please stand? Of the Equal Justice in the Courts Initiative Committee, I see you. Please stand. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you. And thank you for all the work that you do and you've done. And we're all doing this. We're busy people, but we are taking the time out of our busy schedules to work on something so important. I want to thank each and every one of you for the time and effort you've put into making this committee work. So as you can see, the work of the committee is just beginning, and we look forward to continuing to work with you to address the issues we face here in the 4th Judicial District that prevent us from fulfilling the promise of equal justice for all. Now, at this time, I would like to introduce our keynote speaker. We are so honored to have with us today Melissa Howell. Melissa Howell is a great-great-great-granddaughter of Solomon Northup and resides in Seneca Falls, New York. She is a graduate of Simmons College in Boston, Massachusetts, and she earned her Bachelor of Arts degree in Arts Administration. In 2002, Ms. Howell moved to Westchester County to pursue career opportunities in the arts and returned to the Finger Lakes in 2012. Since then, her career highlights include serving under former state Senator Michael Nozzolio as his executive assistant and as a deputy town clerk in Seneca Falls. She currently serves as confidential secretary to the town's supervisor. In 2014, Ms. Howell established the Solomon Northup Legacy Organization to perpetuate the legacy of her ancestor and to preserve its significance in the fabric of our nation's history. Through her entity, she has taken on such projects as the 165th anniversary celebration year of 12 Years a Slave, including the dedication of the Derby and Miller Historical Marker at Auburn, New York. Established a multi-partner cities union as the foundation work to forming a New York Northup Trail, instituted the Story of Solomon Northup in the New York State Equal Rights Heritage Center at Auburn, New York. In addition to these endeavors, Ms. Howell sits on the Solomon Northup Committee for Commemorative Works of Louisiana and New York. This organization's mission is to create public commemorative works of art designed to perpetuate the memory and legacy of Solomon Northup and other significant elements of American slave history in a permanent manner. The organization believes that these artistic memorials represent the continuing efforts to engage injustices through alternative lenses and can transform communities across America through conversation and self-expression, thereby reflecting a more truthful past in the present. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Melissa Howell.
Thank you, everyone. Well, I certainly didn't anticipate all of this, but certainly today is not about me. It is about matters much more important. Certainly the Equal Justice Initiative, the committee, judges, guests. I really appreciate everyone's efforts and tireless work to be agents of change, as was mentioned earlier. This is not my everyday, so I apologize if I get a little nervous. But again, today is very important, and it's a great turnout, and it's exciting, and certainly I don't know why we haven't done this before, but I do believe that this is something that we will institute for future. I would first like to thank Judge Hogan and Judge Frost for being the co-chairs and helping to bring this event together, along with the entire EJI committee. I know that working with Judge Hogan's law clerk, Brett, it's been incredible. And again, I think it's more than I could have anticipated. Sorry. Okay. I'd like to take a moment to remember my dear acquaintance, Jeffrey Smith. Jeffrey Smith was a third great grandson of Henry B. Northup. And I met Jeff in 2014 on a trip to Louisiana to visit the region where Solomon was enslaved. And he was just a bright light and really enjoyed family history, and he certainly had a lot of stories to tell of his own. And from that point forward, we stayed in touch. When this event evolved, I thought, who better to reach out to than Jeff? And so I attempted to reach out to Jeff. Only I learned within a couple of weeks' time the sad news that Jeff had passed away last April. And so I wanted to share just a moment for Jeff, because I know that if he could, he would have gotten in his car and drove from Florida and come here. So again, with the award and Judge Richardson-Mendelson being the recipient in Henry's name and her efforts, I certainly believe that it's a worthy award, which really says a lot about you and being an agent of change, and certainly inspirational. So thank you. What brings us here together today is the story of my grandfather, our grandfather. My cousin Rebecca is here with me today, and I have family watching. So grandfather was born a citizen of New York, a free-born citizen of New York, whose freedom was abruptly stolen by the criminal act of two white men, which ultimately led to his being sold into slavery. Whether grandfather was a free-born citizen of New York or a slave named Platt, one fact remained constant. He was African American, and that meant at any given time in the pre-Civil War years and sometime thereafter, one's freedom was on the line. Kidnappers were many, and their business was to seek out persons of color, runaway slaves, and even to re-enslave freed slaves. And so, like many other states, New York's history is entwined with that of the business of slavery. By the 1600s, New York was the leading slave port in North America. African American slave labor cleared the lands and built New York and the country up. Grandfather said in 12 Years a Slave that he could not wrong the actions of men who knew no different. However, he never passed an opportunity to assist a slave in their attempt to seek freedom. And this was all well before he was enslaved. Upon being rescued in 1853, Grandfather sought judgment against slave trader James Birch. However, the law did not permit an African American to bring a lawsuit to court in Washington, D.C., then known as Washington City, thus leaving Grandfather without justice. In 1854, Grandfather brought charges against the circus men, Alexander Merrill and Joseph Russell, here in New York. The case was eventually dismissed several years later, in 1857, after the Supreme Court overturned the decision of the lower court on the basis that a trial proceeding had been overstepped. The only justice Grandfather received then was the 7 months that the kidnapper spent in jail. Also in 1854, one of the first cases for reparations was brought before the federal government by a prominent New York abolitionist by the name of Gerrit Smith. He, along with fellow petitioners, sought recompense for Grandfather Solomon. While at least 2 petitions were put forth and garnered hundreds of signatures, there was no action taken to provide any monetary provision for him having been sold into slavery as a free man. As we attend to the significance and cultural relevance of Solomon's reverse Underground Railroad trajectory, down from freedom and up from slavery, the resulting work of his freedom narrative, 12 Years a Slave, is a celebration of his tenacity and resilience. This January marked the 170th anniversary of Grandfather's regained freedom at Marksville, Louisiana, and his homecoming here at Glens Falls. In July of this year, we will also mark the historically acclaimed narrative 170th anniversary of publication in Auburn. In my opinion, his recollections on life pre- and post-slavery are his greatest recompense. His words alone have afforded all of us to learn and hear his voice, a voice which speaks of his own personal struggles in and out of freedom, and his views on liberty and the pursuit of happiness in the 19th century. And perhaps, unknowingly to him, he has lent his voice to millions of enslaved men, women, and children whose names, faces, and stories have been lost with them. In the years to follow his regained freedom, Grandfather continued to counsel slaves by way of the Underground Railroad, acting in 2 plays about his ordeal and lecturing on anti-slavery platforms. It was through these means that I believe Grandfather attempted to create a future that spoke his truth, and that truth was life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for everyone. It is in tribute to Grandfather that in 2014, I began the Solomon Northup Legacy to preserve and perpetuate his life story through a variety of endeavors. One such recent endeavor was being invited to sit on the Solomon Northup Committee for Commemorative Works. The committee's focus, as Judge Frost stated, is our attempt to change the conversation through artistic expression and to present a more truthful past in the present. And having said that, I don't have a brochure with me, but you might have seen them around, and certainly they're widely available. I have some very exciting news to share with everyone about the committee's first project, and certainly, I can't imagine why this hasn't happened long before now, but then again, I believe that, now is the time. And the committee is working with a sculptor who is creating the first ever inaugural monument of Solomon Northup, and that monument will be installed in 2024 in Marksville, Louisiana, where he was freed. And the monument, while in its early design stages, is going to hopefully represent a true and complete sort of aspect and perspective of Solomon and who he was as a person. And we know that best through his narrative. While no photos or imagery exists beyond the frontispiece in the narrative, we certainly have family members with whom we are using in that process. But at the same time, while this project is inaugural, much like this event, it is going to create, I think, a conversation, especially in the place in which he was enslaved, and bring forward, hopefully, like I mentioned, conversations that will be a part of this process of change and connecting with individuals and finding that we are much more alike than we are different. And if we are to share in those, then we can understand that we are going to have differences, and that is okay. Is it okay to be from California and to be from, Tennessee? It's okay to have different political views, but to accept each other for those differences. I think that grandfather had a great deal to say about man in the narrative. Hopefully in some ways objectionably, to be objective, but at the same time without, of course, realizing that we all are flawed at the same time. I don't have a flyer, but I'm so sorry. The flyer that I brought with me today does share a little bit about the project and the committee. It does also present the first visual preview of the sculpture that is in the works. It is obscured, but that's purposeful, because we are yet not ready to quite share with the public in entirety just yet, but we're getting there. And with that being said, it is a public art display, and it is requiring the work of many. And certainly we as a committee can't do it ourselves. And so at this point, we are also engaging our fundraising element of the project. And memorials such as this one can transform communities. And simply by, as I mentioned, sparking conversations that have the potential to lead to change. And simply sharing stories of our life experiences is how we can relate to one another. And I can't reiterate that enough, that if we just take the time to speak to our neighbors, to learn about each other, even if it's a few sentences, I think that those stories can teach us just how human we really are. Sorry, I think am I missing a page? I'm sorry. But if you have any questions about the monument project, I'd be more than happy to answer them at a later time. And certainly, again, I'd like to say thank you to the EJI, the 4th Judicial District, and Judge Hogan and Judge Frost and everyone for making this event possible. And certainly I would like to recognize the Henry B. descendants. It's wonderful to have you here. And I look forward to the rest of the ceremony. And again, thank you for all of your tireless work, because you really are the change makers.
Thank you so much for your perspective, and we are so thankful for you being here today. So at this time, I'm going to introduce our leader here in the 4th Judicial District. So this individual is providing such great leadership for us, and he does it with a smile. So at this time, I would love to introduce 4th Judicial District Administrative Judge, the Honorable Felix Katina.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. So nice to be here. Just a couple observations and comments, very brief. First of all, on behalf of the 4th Judicial District, I want to personally welcome our special guest, Melissa Howell, and the other descendants that are here back to their roots. So welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, we celebrate Black History Month during this month of February. And today, here, we're Solomon Northup, born in Minerva, New York, just up the Northway in Essex County, owned and farmed land in Washington County, just east of here, and lived with his family in Saratoga. We honor, recognize, and celebrate this rich history, this very unfortunate history, this ugly history, but nonetheless our history. But most importantly and noteworthy, that we in this room honor his legacy by continuing the fight for justice and equality every day in our courts throughout the state. A fight that cost him dearly, but in the end was able to survive and prevail. Finally, leading this effort for justice and equality in the 3rd Department is our presiding justice of the Appellate Division, a woman of great intellect, wisdom, and humility, the Honorable Elizabeth Gary, who will now share with us a few comments. Presiding Justice Gary.
Thank you. All of very few brief words, because I believe that it may be just me now standing before our honoree's remarks, and she's had a chance to catch her breath. I am so happy to be here for this inaugural award, and I cannot think of anyone who more richly deserves this award than my friend, Honorable Edwina. Thank you so much, Judge Hogan, Judge Frost, the members of the committee, for making this event happen here. It's a lovely afternoon, and I'm pleased to be here. It's an honor to be joined by my colleagues who have been introduced. I am very happy that the 3rd Department is so well represented. Honorable Stan Pritzker, Honorable Christine Clark, Honorable Eddie McShann, and Honorable Sharon Ahrens, as well as our wonderful leader through so many years, the Honorable Thomas Mercure. Good to see you all. We have our clerk here, Bob Mayberger's here too. He doesn't like that I just called him out, but he's been the clerk for so many decades and helps us in all the work we do. What we do is strive for justice. And I know I'm telling a lot of you who really know that, because you know it in your heart and in your soul, in your bones. But for the members of the public, let me just stand here as the leader of the 3rd Department and tell you how keenly we feel that. It's our role to review the work of the trial judges, and I want to say how proud I am that I get to review the work of people who are committed to the resolution of disputes throughout the 4th JD and beyond, because they bring to it what you would hope judges might bring: heart, passion, and a desire to serve justice. And so I just want to share that today. I want to share a few brief words about history. I love history. It's so important that we come together to mark occasions like this because it is painful. It's exquisitely painful to look back at our past. It's exquisitely painful sometimes to watch the news, and we know that. And it's important that we look back because it's so true that only in looking back can we find the right path to lead us forward into the future. And we must find that path. We must work toward that path and that end together. And I'm glad that I work with people who are devoted to that. I think this afternoon is a real demonstration of that. I want to, before I go further, I want to thank you, Melissa, for coming up and sharing, because the best remarks are the remarks from the heart. And you gave us that gift and your legacy, and we appreciate your efforts. You mentioned a brochure, and you didn't have it here, but I think it's here, and I just want to highlight that because so there are copies available. There they are. Good. Okay, right there, back by the door, because I didn't want people to miss that. And thank you for all you're doing to carry this legacy forward. We have not met the promise of equality, justice, liberty for all. That path still lies before us. But we can look back, we can find hope in these stories, because these are stories. The story of Solomon Northup and Henry B. Northup are stories of hope, resilience, courage, the capacity for change. And those are the things that we can bring into the work that we do, into this public service we provide, and ultimately to make a better future together. The last thing I'm going to say before I turn it over to our guest of honor is thank you to the members of the NAACP. I am often struck because it's so close to my heart, honestly, that when we recite the Pledge of Allegiance, when we sing our national anthem, I honestly often, if not always, get a tear in my eye because of what it represents, which is so deep, so real, so profound, so much what we share together. And this afternoon's presentation of that was superb. So thank you all.
Since we did this as a little bit of a surprise, the program is not being strictly followed. Judge St. George had rendered his comments when he presented the well-deserved award. We did want Judge Richardson-Mendelson to have a minute to catch her breath so that she can, one, accept the award and share her thoughts. So please give a very warm welcome to our honoree, Judge Richardson-Mendelson.
I don't think there are hours sufficient for me to be ready. I'm still not ready. I will try. I will do my best. I am not ready. One of my daughters used to say, "Oh, I'm just overwhelmed." I'm overwhelmed right now. So please bear with me. Be patient. Grace, my heart is so very full for so many reasons, bearing witness to this special day, this special moment with all of you very, very special people. I gave our keynote honoree, because you honor us with our presence, permission to cry. We spoke earlier today, and she said, "Well, what if I cry when I speak?" I said, "Don't worry about it. There's plenty of room for love in the law." I wasn't talking about myself. No fair. Careful what you wish for. Careful what you put in the atmosphere. So thank you for being with us. Thank you for being, I'm going off script, which is always, always a bad idea. I do it anyway. You'll just have to forgive me. You gave me the award. You can't take it back. So forgive me. But I am going off script. Your cousin is here and you're here. Can you please rise and introduce us to your cousin who is here? Rebecca. Thank you for being here. We met earlier today. I didn't know who you were. We were both looking at the artifacts and gushing over the specialness of this moment. So thank you for being here. We also have the relatives of Henry B. here. Please rise. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. You honor us with your presence. History is it all. All of this is our history. So, back to script. Off script. I brought goodies for the honoree. I knew I'd be surprised. And I get to take my paperweight back home. This is mine. Thank you very much. I also have one for Judges Frost and Hogan. And I have a few extras for some special folks. Got yours too. Judge St. George, I'm not letting you have yours. That is your punishment for making me a puddle today and keeping secrets from me. Thank you so much. I'm so deeply honored. My deep gratitude, my unending gratitude goes to our 4th Judicial District's Equal Justice Committee. And I accept this honor gleefully. I will accept an honor like this gleefully, an inaugural honor of this high measure, but not just for myself. I accept it on behalf of every single one of our Equal Justice Committees that are working so very hard all through and throughout our beautiful state to promote equal justice in unique ways. And the 4th JD, of course, you're my favorite, as is the 3rd JD, as is the 6th JD, as is every single JD in our beautiful state. Of course you're my favorite. I do this with my kids too. Of course you're my favorite, for good reason. Our equal justice work in our courts began as our court system's response to the life and the involuntary legacy left us by George Floyd. And that has resulted in our nation's most recent reckoning on racism and the responsibility that all of our institutions have to promote justice and to reckon with injustice. And the courts commissioned a study on racism in the courts, which is unique. We didn't just issue a statement saying we must do better. We issued a study, asked a highly respected public servant, Secretary Jay Johnson, to come investigate us, tell us how we are doing. And he did his job quite well. In that 100-page, painful-to-read report that exists, that is not on a shelf, it is available to you all to read, and particularly to our court system folks here. It is our obligation to read it again and again and again as we strive to do better in promoting and providing the justice that our community members deserve. And it has been a privilege of my lifetime to lead our court system's implementation of these recommendations that were produced by Secretary Johnson in 2020. And we've added other names, painfully, we've added other names to George Floyd's name that keeps our work, our mission, our role, our mandate alive. And we grieve. And we grieve. And as we grieve, we continue to do the work that is before us, that is ours to do this season and beyond. As a court system, we have instituted dozens of programmatic reforms and transformation. Reform is not sufficient. We must transform our courts. In August of 2022, we've launched the first in what will be a series of mandatory bias training programs that every New York State judge and professional court employee and court officer, including those who serve in our town and village justice courts, must attend, and learn from. We have launched an impactful, I'm so proud of this, jury orientation video teaching our jurors and our potential jurors of the dangers of bias and the critically important role that they play in promoting justice by serving that high civic duty. We know how important it is to vote as a civic duty. It is as important to serve as a juror in our state courts. The video that we produced on bias, implicit and explicit, because explicit bias, old-fashioned, plain old bias is alive and well, and we have to address that along with implicit bias, has been viewed by over 400,000 potential and actual jurors in the state of New York, and that is amazing to me. Our jury orientation video is so highly regarded that we just this week received a request from California. They want to put their own introduction and ending, but they want our jury orientation video to be displayed to their jurors to teach them. Is that wonderful? Impact, New York, impact. So as long as I have breath in my body and blood in these veins, equal justice, access to equal justice in our courts will remain a top priority of our courts. This multi-layered, multi-year, permanent work of the courts, which is ours to do, to eradicate all forms of bias in our courts. And we do unapologetically lead with ending racism. That is our mandate, and we are unapologetic about that. But we also recognize intersectionality, the impact of intersectionality, and our obligation as the court and as judicial leaders and as those who serve the cause of justice to eradicate all forms of bias, discrimination, and the disparate impact that that has on the people that we are compelled to serve in our courts. And so we will eradicate bias that is based upon age, creed, color, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, religion, national origin, disability, marital status, and socioeconomic status, and more. And I remind everyone when I talk about this, I'll remind you as well, that our rules of the chief administrative judge include all of those identifying factors in our mandate as judges as we do the work, and thank you judges for being here, as we do the work, as you do the work to promote justice. These are in our court rules. This is not a side issue. This is not committee work. This is your work. This is your mandate. And we are responsible for ourselves and our behavior as judges, and we hold that mandate true, but we're also responsible for the attorneys who appear before us. Our court rules tell us that, right? And we're responsible for all of the court professionals who serve under our watch. It is ours. We're the holders of justice. This is ours to do, and we take that on. Because a bias and discrimination-free court system is our goal, it's our mandate, it's our moment. This moment is our moment to meet. So while we have successfully implemented many of Secretary Johnson's recommendations, we do not consider that the beginning and the end. It was the beginning. It is a floor. It is not a ceiling. We are going well beyond what has been recommended because this is our mandate and it is our work. And I'm particularly proud, and I do brag about you all the time, your ears must ring. Our equal justice committees are on fire, and the 4th Judicial District is an example of the remarkable work we're doing all over the state. But it's not just the committees. We've got a beautiful audience here. We have community here. Each of our equal justice committees must work with the bar and with the communities that we're privileged to serve. So figure it out. Every single one who's here listening, you came here for a reason. What is your role? What is your piece in this? What is your role? What is your piece in this? We all have a role to play, and I won't tell you what yours is, although I am a bossy judge, so I could tell you what you're right. If you need some help in figuring out what your role is, let's have a chat. I can help you with that. But we all have an obligation to do something to make the world that our children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, what your grandfather did for all of us, what your ancestor did for all of us, we have the obligation to do for those who follow us, don't we? So deep exploration of the type that we're doing today of our history is critically important. It's a first step in every single endeavor. Quite frankly, I did ask. Remember, when a judge asks, it's a court order. So I asked our equal justice committees to look at their local history, and we're doing that in every corner of the state, because we can't talk about, we can have programs and we can have educational programs, but if we do not recognize and acknowledge our own history, right where we are, and we New Yorkers like to brag about how wonderful we are. We just like to do that. It's part of being a New Yorker, no matter where you are in New York. But there are ugly aspects of the human being that we must acknowledge and face, or we will be bound to repeat the harms of the past. And we cannot repair and we cannot restore until we acknowledge our history. You know, one of the most troubling parts of this story, and it's a story, but a true story, of course, is that while that precious day where the cotton picking days were over for Solomon, who did Solomon leave behind there to continue? So this is not, it may have been an amazing story, and it is, and it's important. Let's ponder a moment those who are left beyond after watching that beautiful embrace, and continue to pick and continue today to pick. So this year's theme, Black resilience. Black resilience, I struggled with this. I'm popular this month. Folks, you're going to hear the same thing. So if you're hearing me next week and the week after, forgive me. Some things are worth repeating. This year's national theme is Black resistance. And some of our courts have added to that term, Brooklyn. I give Brooklyn Black History Month Committee credit for adding Black resilience and Black excellence to Black resistance. And I'm a judge, and judges have to be careful. So Black resistance in the body of this resisting Black judge would look different than someone else speaking about Black resistance. So what shall I say to you? I'll leave you with some quotes that aren't mine, but from two of among my favorite Black resistors, and there are many. They're words of wisdom and a call to action, and a call to continue this grand work that we're doing, that we have begun, but we are not done with, that is ours this season and beyond. So first, let's start with our recently departed civil rights legend, John Lewis, his words about resistance. He recognized that every step that has been attained that allows me to stand before you here today has been attained by someone else's struggle, along with my own personal struggles, and we all have our struggles. Many of us have our struggles that we will share with you. But these were his words of wisdom to us that reflect and represent Black resistance to me. And it's a famous quote. And I actually have with me his own Twitter account with him sending this message on his own Twitter account. So he is far more, we lost him recently. He is our civil rights legend. And of course, he is more technologically astute than I am, because I could not use Twitter for you, but he did for me. And this is what John Lewis said: "Do not get lost in a sea of despair. Be hopeful, be optimistic. Our struggle is not the struggle of a day, a week, a month, or a year. It is the struggle of a lifetime. Never, ever be afraid to make some noise and get in good trouble, necessary trouble." One more, another local legend, Harriet Tubman, advised to those she fearlessly, what a fierce, fierce woman, she fearlessly led to freedom. And here's her quote of Black resistance: "If you hear the dogs, keep going. If you see the torches in the woods, keep going. If there is shouting after you, keep going. Don't ever stop. Keep going. If you want a taste of freedom, keep going. So on this beautiful day, and it is such a beautiful day here, we do not have dogs, torches, and shouting, but we do have the jobs that are ours to do. And we do have circumstances that may make us want to stop. But sweet Harriet Tubman urges us, we must keep going. And as we do, let us not forget what John Lewis called us to do, to make our very good and very necessary trouble along this journey. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those wonderful words. They inspire us to keep going and doing what we're doing, and we each have a role, as you stated. So at this time, we're going to call up the Glens Falls chapter of the NAACP one more time. Give it up for them. And they are going to lead us in the Black National Anthem.
We can't thank the NAACP enough for being here and adding so much to our ceremony. I want to thank Judge Katina for appointing us to the committee. One of the joys has been for us to get to know each other. I have a bunch of people to thank, but the first person is going to be Brett Eby. Brett Eby, stand up. Stand up. He is my law clerk and has worked tirelessly. He found Mr. Hay. Mr. Hay, thank you for coming here today. Melissa Howard, thank you for coming here today. Chief Nasta in the court security, Lieutenant Costello, Captain Taskinson, Sheriff Zerlo, thank you. Steve Bulger, County Administrator, thank you. I am beyond over the moon with the turnout from the judiciary. How proud are we of our colleagues?
Thank you.
From the Court of Appeals to the Appellate Division to OCA to the trial leadership, all of you share our core mission of equal justice in the courts. And by you being here today, you reaffirmed to the public your commitment by your presence here. So we thank you. We thank you. I want to give an extra special shout out to Judge Walsh, Judge Vero, and Judge Murphy, who were our point guards on this project. So thank you very much. And now I'm going to turn this over to my good friend Tanika Frost, who will thank Paul McCarty, the guy from Fort Edward I've known for my whole life. I thank and Lauren Rogers, but Judge Frost will cover whatever I forgot.
I think you covered everything, actually. Again, just thank everyone, members of the public, members. I know I see a lot of my Saratoga friends here, the Frederick Island Black Elks.
Yes,
thank you for being here. It's just been a pleasure this afternoon to share this event with you, and we look forward to having more and seeing you back with us again soon. So thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh, sorry.